Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap here at Inside Nebraska. With me is Steve Marik. I'm Zack Carpenter. We're here at Memorial Stadium where Matt Rhule just got done wrapping up a postmortem of sorts on Nebraska's 2023 season. Talked about the disappointment, not making a bowl. Talked about going into year two and how he's already on to year two, similar to Bill Belichick of on to Cincinnati. He always mentions Belichick, so in my head that reminded me of that a little bit when you mentioned that. We'll get into that in a second. But newsy press conference today, newsy week, and about to get newsier with the transfer portal opening up December 4th on Monday. And encourage you guys to go to InsideNebraska.com to check out all of our reports on that stuff. I encourage you guys to like this video and subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. Get those videos dropped directly in your feed because it's going to be busy. But today, Steve, just rattling off the list of names of guys who are expected back, who's expected to leave, and who's definitely leaving.
So Ben Scott, starting center, kind of an important guy. Rhule today said he was expected back for the 2024 season. So if that actually happens, that's a huge development for the offensive line that I thought kind of continuously got better, even while losing two starters in the middle of the year to a season-ending injuries.
Even though no one wants to hear that, the offensive line got better. I thought
they
did.
Yes, they did. They actually did get better. Marcus Washington, he is asking Nebraska to try to get him a waiver for a sixth and final season next year. Obviously, he had that, the former transfer from Texas. He had that season-ending knee injury at Illinois, and he's thinking about and trying to come back for another year. Matt Rhule did say, like, for his situation, it's going to be complicated with the NCAA and getting a waiver, but they'll try nonetheless.
And really quickly on that, it's a very complicated rule where you're not allowed to play in over 30%. I believe it's 30% of the games. If you can take a medical redshirt, get that waiver, but it's complicated because he got hurt in the first quarter, drive against Illinois. He was suspended the first half against Minnesota, so that's sort of the complications that go into it.
Yeah, and you bring up season-ending injuries. The offensive side had a ton, especially at running back, Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson. Matt Rhule talked about those two specifically. I think it was Gabe Ervin. He had a dislocated hip. Kicked him out for the season, and then Ramir Johnson, dislocated shoulder, out for the season. Matt Rhule said that they're expected to to return. Is that what you heard?
He was saying it was a positive outlook. Sounding good
injuries
for them to come back. Yep.
Yes, and then just moving along down the list here, Blaise Gunnerson and Ty Hahn not expected to return, and they have eligibility remaining, but they will not. Matt Rhule said he did not expect them to come back for the 2024 season. Ty Hahn is going to go back home and farm. And then Blaise Gunnerson, just a ton of injuries. Anybody who's kept up with him and his career from Kemper, Iowa, I think it was, he's just every single year it was something with him. So I think he's just kind of moving on from Nebraska.
Best season probably of his career because he was the healthiest of his career, but he was still battling his injuries.
Just could not ever get right. So that's kind of tough news from Blaise Gunnerson's side of things. And then also a handful of guys who walked on senior day but are still kind of iffy on if they're returning next year or not. Isaac Gifford, John Bullock, Bryce Benhart, and then, we'll also say Jeff Sims. We don't know about quarterback Jeff Sims and what he's going to be doing. I don't think any decisions haven't been made there yet, but some decisions still up in the air with Isaac Gifford, John Bullock, and Bryce Benhart as well.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into Sims and the quarterback discussion here in a second, but I mean, just rattling off that list, who jumps out to you in your mind, do you think, of the guys that are TBD? We don't know yet, but who do you think would be the most impactful to come back if they decide they have an NFL versus return decision? Who do you think is most impactful?
So if we're not going Ben Scott because Matt Rhule said he expects him to, let's go with Bryce Benhart. 41 career starts at right tackle. It would be awesome if you could get your starting right tackle back in Bryce Benhart. Especially for an offensive line that continued to get better with some pieces that were inserted midway through the year. Like the Justin Evans-Jenkins and Henry Lutovskis of the world. If you can get back Bryce Benhart starting right tackle, he's been here forever, but it would be his sixth season next year in 2024. If he would come back, that would be absolutely massive.
And, I mean, I was thinking about this a day or two ago, and Jansen prepared to hit the censor button because I feel like a curse word is the only way to emphasize it, is with Bryce Benhart, I do feel like we're not talking enough about how good of a year he had compared to previous years when he got so much shit for how badly he played.
Oh, yeah.
Rightfully so, I think. He had a massive turnaround this year. I feel like we don't talk about that as often as we should. Maybe I'm in the clouds and maybe that is being discussed enough, but I thought he was extremely impactful on that offensive line.
From just like the amateur eye, like you and I have, we're not coaches, we're not in the offensive line room, so we don't know technically like if he had a really good season or not. I'm sure a lot of local coaches could come and educate us on that. But the best way that we could tell that if he had a good season or not was if we heard about him throughout games.
Yeah.
We did not hear a single thing about Bryce Benhart during the games. I mean, it wasn't as obvious bad stuff as it was earlier in his year. But credit to Matt Rhule, Donovan Raiola, Corey Campbell, Kristen Coggan, all the behind-the-scenes people with what they did with Bryce Benhart, because it did not look good for most of his career here. But then new staff shows up, new people, support staff shows up, and they got Bryce Benhart right. I mean, at 6'9", we see him walking around all the time. He looks great out there. And again, I go back to we never really heard him. We weren't complaining about Bryce Benhart even close to as much as we were in previous seasons. So Bryce Benhart, getting that guy back would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to harp on it too much. I just think it's sounding like it's moving toward him returning, but we don't know for sure yet. Same situation with the running backs, Gabe Irvin Jr. and Ramir Johnson, who I would put them, I think, the tier below Bryce Benhart, Ben Scott, as far as impact, most impactful returns if they get those two guys back right and fully healthy, because of the way the Nebraska running back situation is right now, currently. I mean, it's November 29th, so a billion things are still left to happen, but you lose Keywan Lacey in the 2024 class. He was a guy who was exploding onto the scene. You could tell that he was going to be, I think I can pretty confidently say, you'd probably agree that he was a guy who'd get on the field early in his Nebraska career. Just the way he's built, that's just sort of how he, the type of athlete he is, and his experience down in Texas high school football. But you got Quentin Ives, who Rhule said today is
said he was going to be a star.
Yeah.
And you look at him and you see just the 6'2", 6'3" type long strider, just a big body at running back. You don't always see that in the Big Ten, but so it's going to be fun to watch him develop. And Matt Rhule, like you said, he called him a future star, I think. So now that's going to be it. I think Nebraska has some pieces that they like, young pieces that they like at running back. But when we're talking about things like next year, and who would be best coming back, just stick with the offensive linemen, the defensive linemen, the line of scrimmage guys who do the real work out there. You can always find skill players, in my opinion. So it's the guys that on the line of scrimmage doing the real work that would be most impactful.
Most impactful for sure. I still think, though, the running backs are impactful in this
for sure.
This offensive system, the way they want to play Big Ten football. I mean, the emphasis on running the ball, and you have Emmett Johnson, who really proved himself. I think he deserves a shot at RB1 next season. But if you just like that stability of having those veteran guys, if you get Gabe and Ramir back, so
absolutely
not even waiting to hear. I think it sounds like Ramir's going to wind up getting that waiver for another year, or the medical red shirt, and Gabe, you just wait on the recovery. But you mentioned Sims just coming back, or whether or not he is or isn't, we don't know. Rhule say he hasn't met with him, doesn't know for certain what his situation is. But they took him out of the portal last year, obviously. Yeah. And I think Rhule wouldn't say it outright on today at today's press conference that they're going to be going portal hunting for a quarterback, but we know they are. Yeah. So he doesn't. I don't think he has to say that, but he did mention the price tag that comes with it. Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind. And he wanted to make it very clear.
Oh yeah. He wanted to make sure that everybody knew, every Husker fan knows what the situation is going to be, and if Nebraska, Matt Rhule can get a transfer quarterback into Lincoln, and not just any transfer quarterback, somebody with a quality quarterback who has past experience and production that you can look back and lean on and be confident that he would come here and produce. It's going to cost $1 to $2 million.
He said 1.5 to $2 million.
He said 1 to 1.5 to $2 million. So that's just so everybody is on the same page. It's going to cost Nebraska to bring in a really good quarterback who you feel confident inserting right away and him making an impact.
And he said he wants multiple years.
Yes.
Multiple years eligible?
Yeah,
still,
multiple
years experience?
So Matt Rhule said if he's bringing in a quarterback, or really any transfer, they want to have somebody with multiple years worth of eligibility, or he needs to be an instant impact if it's a one and done type thing. So that's his two big traits that he's looking for.
And I think after the product we saw this season with 26 turnovers by the quarterbacks alone, Nebraska led the entire nation with 100 or 100. I said 131 turnovers.
Saying that out loud is crazy to hear.
31 turnovers, which ranked 130th, aka dead last, and 26 of them were from the quarterbacks, which itself alone would be the most in Power 5 and second most in the country. So after seeing that from the quarterbacks, I think Nebraska fans, I was talking about this with Greg after the Iowa game on our Rapid Recap show, I think Nebraska fans would happily start a GoFundMe page of some sort, maybe donate to try to take a chunk of change out of or take a bite out of that $1.52 million.
I think the 1890 initiative is hoping that some people kind of chip in with some stuff here. But
the thing is, I mean, they paid Jeff Sims. They paid Jeff Sims to come here. And
they got Jeff Sims here.
He did not work out. So that's where it's like, what sort of lessons do you take from that entire experience? Because if you pay the guy, I think what we just talked about with Rhule, his evaluation of a portal quarterback, you need a guy who's proven experience and who you are a little more confident. And I think maybe it was a situation where they were going so fast, so hot and heavy, like landing here, like, all right, we need a quarterback. Portal just opened pretty much right when they got here. So it's like, all right, let's get him in here. We believe him. He can be a playmaker, but
there were so many moving parts. Like late November when he was hired and everything. I know, but they were just like going through a lot. And Matt Rhule even said, how people might not want to hear it, but it was the first go around back from the NFL back in college football, and they're learning with things. They're learning about NIL, the transfer portal, all the different rules that comes with it. So might not want to hear it right now if you're a Husker fan who's not watching a bowl game again for since 7 years, I think. But Matt Rhule did say that he's learned from this season, and he's going to be trying to make the necessary adjustments moving forward. So.
Yeah, that's sort of the last thing to talk about. I mean, it seems like since his Rhule, since he came from the Panthers, like he is handling being a college football coach a lot more transactionally, a lot more NFL style with his roster management, his coaching.
The behind the scenes people too, like Nebraska has like one of the biggest behind the scenes staff like in the country. They have to. There's so many people here.
Yeah, it's loaded. I mean, that's that, and
that's an NFL thing too. I don't think it's like this, like in other programs across college football. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think it's that. I think it's the analytics. I think it's a lot of different things. I think he's taking from his NFL experiences. I think there's positives and negatives to it, and we could be here for a long time discussing that. But because what's that going to look like in year two? Is he going to leave some things off the table, take some things off the table that he did this past season as far as the way he manages things and pro style, what will he bring back? But either way, it's on to year two for him. That's the last. That's I think the overarching message, and wanted to save the best for last, because I mean some of the things you hear. I mean, obviously Rhule's great at the podium. He's gonna do his pastor son not speech, but just he has a way of. As a wordsmith, and it sounds like, I don't know. I think there's provided reasons for hope, optimism going into year two because of some of the things he said about the young guys buying into this. It's our process now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was like this maybe after the first year of Scott Frost, if I remember back and trying to, after that season, did it feel like it does right now? And I don't think it really did, honestly. I think Matt Rhule is really, like you said, he's building a foundation. And while some on the outside want this thing to get going right away for this rebuild not to be a rebuild and just get things instantly better, I don't know if that was entirely realistic. And so, when you hire, and Matt Rhule said this, when you hire somebody like him, it's going to go slow. He's going to do it the old-fashioned, old-school way. And so,
tear it down to the studs.
And just kind of build this thing how he wants to do it, and that's going to take time. So, but the thing is, they were so close to one win, and then they flopped in the last four. So, when you look at it like that, I think it was kind of a failure to finish when they were so close. But in the other way, I think if you can't see the progress being made right now inside of the program, that's on you. I do. I think a lot of people elsewhere do as well. There's real progress being made in Nebraska, in my opinion. So, I mean, it's just moving on to year two. That's going to be the goal, starting with early signing day coming up here before you know it. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think both things can be true, man.
Yes.
Honestly, you wrote a column after about the positivity, the progress, the signs of growth.
The clock management. I mean, Matt Rhule obviously has to get better at the clock management stuff, and I think he knows that. And all of this is going to be dissected and kind of learned on in the offseason. So there's a lot not to like, but there's a lot to like as well. But, just a little bit more time, a little bit of patience is needed.
Yeah, and to ask a fan base to be patient when you've been asking them to be patient.
And I totally
for
get that
years.
part too. Yeah.
That's the antsiness, the anxiety, especially when Rhule even said himself, like, this is more like year 2 at Temple or Baylor, where they went 6-6, 7-6, and to talk about a bowl game, like, once we get to bowl practice, maybe we'll have captains. Like, once we get those bowl practices under our belt. And he was saying that, like, in the spring and the fall, before the season, like during the season, I think he mentioned it. So to be up front with it, and then sort of trying to speak it into existence, I think also.
Yeah.
Like, for it to fall flat with, you said failure, and I agree, it was a failure. You lose 4 games in a row and you're one win away.
It was really bad.
It's not going to leave anyone feeling good. So if you watch and listen to that Matt Rhule press conference at home, and you're buying into everything he's saying, I fully support it. If you're just sitting there with hesitancy and saying, like, okay, I'm tired of the talk, like, let's actually prove it. Like, year 2, sure, but I need to see these signs of progress, these improvements. I'm right there with you too. I fully support that, because there's 2 ways to look at it.
The biggest thing, you mentioned the column that I wrote after that Iowa game was mostly positive, but I did mention that a lot of the negative things as well. But the main reason for wanting to write that is because of what some of the outgoing guys were saying. I feel like it was really directed toward everybody else. It's like, hey, I've been inside this program. I know about Matt Rhule. I know about his plan. I'm good with it. Ty Robinson would be drafted if he went out there. He's coming back for a 6th season. Omar Brown, what he talked about at the podium. Alex Bullock, what he talked about at the podium after the Iowa game. They were all very, very bought in and excited for 2024. And so that's kind of what led me to be like, you know what, there's a lot of things being laid down foundationally that is going to pay off in the long run. It's hard to wait for it. Patience is needed, but at the end, I think it's really going to be a good thing here.
Yeah, I think the tenor of that post-game press conference from the players was a lot. It was like a lot more positive than I thought it was going to be. I did not see that coming. Like, from those guys you mentioned, Newsy and
Newsy as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of things to talk about and break down going into year 2, and I don't know if you had any last tidbits to hit on, but we're. Anything?
No, that's about it. A lot of scribbles right here. I think we covered it all.
You take extensive notes. Honestly, that's what I need.
I thought about doing it on my phone, but old pen and paper works just fine.
I appreciate. I'm a newspaper, ink on your hand guy. Like, I know you are too. So I always appreciate that. I'm like, all right, if I don't.
I used to deliver those back in the day.
Me too. Me too. My brother had a paper route that I helped him with. Like, he was in high school. I was in elementary, middle school. So I went around and tossing newspapers into the wrong porches, and he's getting in trouble for it. It's like, well, that's on him.
That's on him.
Pay me my money for helping out. Give me the extra $10, Daniel.
There you go.
Shout out to Daniel Carpenter. Congrats on your move to South Dakota this week. So congrats to him, and shout out to every Husker fan, I guess, around Lincoln. So we'll be back again. I don't know when on a Rapid Recap edition. We don't know the next press conference. Probably National Signing Day. December 20th is most likely the next time we'll talk with Rhule, and that was the biggest press conference of the offseason, I thought, last year, most revealing. So really excited to see what he has to say when that time comes. But that's going to do it for us from here at Memorial Stadium, or at the Hawks Championship Center, rather. So for Steve Marik, I'm Zack Carpenter. We'll catch you guys again next time.